September 11, 2001, a normal Tuesday morning that turned into one of the darkest days in modern history. Within hours, the world watched in shock as symbols of power, security, and stability collapsed live on television. The 9/11 attacks 2001 were a series of coordinated terrorist hijackings in the United States. 19 militants associated with Al-Qaeda seized 4 commercial airplanes. 2 of them were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, causing both skyscrapers to collapse. A third plane struck the Pentagon in Virginia, while the fourth, United Airlines Flight 93, crashed in Pennsylvania after passengers attempted to overpower the hijackers. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives that day. The attacks were orchestrated under the leadership of Osama bin Laden, and they triggered a global response, including the US-led of our own terror. 9/11 was not just an attack. It was a turning point that reshaped international politics, security systems, military strategies, and the course of the 21st century. September 11, 2001, a date that permanently divided modern history into a before and after. What began as a calm, ordinary Tuesday morning in the United States transformed within minutes into a scene of chaos, disbelief, and unimaginable tragedy. Millions watched live as smoke poured into the sky over New York City, unaware that they were witnessing an event that would reshape global politics, security systems, warfare strategies, and international relations for decades to come. The 9/11 attacks 2001 were a series of coordinated terrorist hijackings carried out by 19 members of Al-Qaeda, an extremist organization led by Osama bin Laden. The attackers boarded 4 commercial passenger airplanes departing from airports in the northeastern United States, intending to use them as weapons against symbolic American landmarks at 8:46 a.m. The first plane, American Airlines Flight 11, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Initially, many assumed it was a tragic accident. However, just 17 minutes later at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower. The second impact made it unmistakably clear. This was a coordinated attack. The Twin Towers were among the tallest buildings in the world, iconic symbols of economic strength and global trade. As flames engulfed the upper floors, thousands of people were trapped inside. Oh fuck. Emergency responders rushed toward the buildings while others desperately tried to escape. Less than 2 hours after the first strike, both towers collapsed. First the South Tower at 9:59 a.m. and then the North Tower at 10:28 a.m. The collapses created massive clouds of dust and debris that covered lower Manhattan, turning daylight into darkness. Meanwhile, at 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the western side of the Pentagon, the headquarters of the United States Department of Defense. The attack on the Pentagon symbolized a direct strike against America's military power. The fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, took off from Newark but was delayed. After learning through phone calls that other planes had been used in attacks, passengers attempted to overpower the hijackers. The resistance prevented the aircraft from reaching its intended target, believed to be either the US Capitol or the White House. The plane ultimately crashed into a field in Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m., killing everyone on board. The passengers' actions are often remembered as an act of extraordinary courage. In total, nearly 3,000 people were killed, including civilians from over 90 countries, firefighters, police officers, and emergency personnel. Thousands more were injured. It remains one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in history. The immediate aftermath was marked by shock and grief. Airports across the United States were shut down. Airspace was closed for the first time in American history. Financial markets halted operations. Nations around the world expressed solidarity and condemnation of the attacks. Within weeks, the US government launched a military response. In October 2001, the United States, along with allied forces, invaded Afghanistan to dismantle Al-Qaeda and remove the Taliban regime that had provided safe haven to its leaders. This marked the beginning of what became known as the War on Terror, a global campaign aimed at combating terrorism and extremist networks. The impact of 9/11 extended far beyond the battlefield. Domestically, the United States enacted sweeping security reforms. The Department of Homeland Security was established. Airport security procedures changed dramatically. Passengers faced stricter screenings, restrictions on liquids, reinforced cockpit doors, and expanded surveillance measures. Intelligence agencies gained broader powers under legislation such as the USA Patriot Act. Internationally, alliances shifted. NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time in its history, declaring the attack on one member as an attack on all. Military operations expanded beyond Afghanistan, eventually leading to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The justification and consequences of these interventions remain subjects of intense debate among scholars, policymakers, and historians. The attacks also deeply influenced global perceptions, particularly regarding security, identity, and geopolitics. Many Muslim communities worldwide faced increased scrutiny and discrimination as the actions of extremists were wrongly associated with an entire religion. At the same time, global counterterrorism strategies intensified, reshaping diplomatic relationships and internal policies across continents. Osama bin Laden remained at large for nearly a decade after the attacks. On May 2, 2011, US forces located and killed him in Abbottabad, Pakistan. His death was viewed by many as a symbolic milestone, yet it did not fully end the broader conflict against terrorism. Beyond politics and warfare, 9/11 profoundly affected culture, media, and collective memory. Memorials were built to honor the victims, including the National September 11 Memorial and Museum at the former World Trade Center site. The skyline of New York was eventually restored with the construction of One World Trade Center, also known as the Freedom Tower, a symbol of resilience and rebuilding. The psychological impact was immense. For a generation that witnessed the events live on television, the images of the collapsing towers became permanently embedded in memory. It altered how people viewed safety, travel, and global interconnectedness. The sense of vulnerability changed public consciousness in ways that continue to influence society. Economically, the attacks caused billions of dollars in damages and long-term financial consequences. Insurance claims, rebuilding efforts, military expenditures, and heightened security budgets reshaped economic priorities. The wars that followed cost trillions of dollars and resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties over 2 decades. Critics and analysts have examined intelligence failures that preceded the attacks. Reports later revealed missed warning signs and coordination gaps between agencies. These findings prompted reforms aimed at improving information sharing and counter-terrorism capabilities. Over time, 9/11 has been studied not only as a terrorist act, but as a turning point in global history. It accelerated surveillance technologies, influenced immigration policies, and reshaped international law concerning security and military intervention. The debate over balancing civil liberties with national security became more intense than ever. For younger generations who did not witness the attacks live, 9/11 exists as both a historical event and a continuing influence. Its legacy is visible in airport security lines, foreign policy decisions, global alliances, and the ongoing struggle against extremist ideologies. Ultimately, the 9/11 attacks were more than a single day of destruction. They marked the beginning of a new era, one defined by heightened security awareness, geopolitical instability, and a global fight against terrorism. The consequences are still unfolding, and the lessons continue to shape the 21st century. September 11, 2001 remains a reminder of how quickly the world can change and how deeply a single day can alter the course of history. In conclusion, the 9/11 attacks 2001 were not only a devastating act of terrorism but a defining moment that reshaped the modern world. The destruction of the World Trade Center, the strike on the Pentagon, and the crash of United Airlines Flight 93 exposed vulnerabilities that many believed were impossible. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost, leaving a lasting scar on families, nations, and global consciousness. The response that followed, military interventions, security reforms, and international counterterrorism efforts, continues to influence global politics and civil liberties. More than 2 decades later, 9/11 stands as a reminder of both human cruelty and human courage. the cruelty of extremist violence, and the courage of first responders and ordinary citizens. Its legacy endures in policies, memorials, and collective memory, shaping how the world understands security, conflict, and resilience in the 21st century.